Aurora woke up feeling a heaviness in her chest she couldn't explain. The morning light sneaking through the window did nothing to lighten the weight on her heart. She had just turned 30, but felt decades older. Her reflection in the mirror was barely recognizable. Tired eyes, a forced smile, and a girl who had forgotten how to truly love herself. The world expected her to be strong, to handle everything, but inside she felt fragile, broken. Her days blurred into one another. Work, home, raising her daughter. The endless struggle to keep everyone happy, to keep herself invisible. She had learned early that vulnerability was a weakness, and so she built walls, high and thick. One afternoon, after a harsh argument with her partner, Aurora sat alone in the dark living room, her daughter asleep in the next room. She questioned everything: her worth, her dreams, her future. Female story. Emotional narrative. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she whispered to herself, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. She felt lost, rejected by her own reflection. That night, the silence was louder than ever, but somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark flickered, a whisper of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the darkness. Aurora didn't know it yet, but her journey to rediscover herself was about to begin. A journey of pain, healing, and above all, love. Aurora walked through her days like a shadow. People around her saw a woman who managed it all: the house, the job, the child. But no one noticed the exhaustion behind her eyes, the silent cries muffled behind polite smiles. The relationship with her partner had become cold, mechanical. The affection was gone, replaced by indifference, and sometimes harsh words. Every sentence seemed like a trap, every silence a punishment. The love that once warmed her had turned into emotional frostbite. She tried to pretend. She told herself it was just a phase. That love changed, that maybe she was asking for too much. But inside, she felt like she was fading, piece by piece. Every time she stayed quiet, swallowed her pain, she lost a little more of herself. Her daughter, now 7, was her only light. It was for her that Aurora kept going, even when all she wanted was to run away and scream into the void. One day, while brushing her daughter's hair, the girl asked, "Mommy, why don't you smile anymore?" That question hit harder than any insult ever could. Aurora stared at her daughter, unable to answer. How do you explain to a child that your soul is tired? That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind kept repeating her daughter's question like an echo. When had she stopped smiling? When had she stopped seeing herself as someone worthy of love? In the silence of her bedroom, Aurora made a decision. She couldn't continue like this. Not for her, not for her daughter. Something had to change, even if she didn't yet know how. And for the first time in years, she whispered to herself, "I need to find myself again." It was the beginning of a promise, a quiet one, but one that would lead her to places she never imagined. Aurora had always been the one who held everything together. At work, she was the problem solver. At home, the caregiver. In her relationship, the one who gave more than she ever received. But everyone has a limit, and Aurora's was getting dangerously close. It happened on a Thursday. She had spent the day juggling work calls, emails, cooking dinner, and helping her daughter with homework. When her partner arrived, he barely looked at her. No, hello, no, how was your day? Just a critical comment about the house being a mess. Something inside her cracked. "Do you even see me anymore?" she asked, not shouting, just tired. He rolled his eyes, muttered something under his breath, and walked away. Aurora stood there, paralyzed, the silence after that moment screaming louder than any fight they'd ever had. She went to the bathroom and locked the door. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself again. But this time, she didn't cry. Her eyes were dry, but burning. That night, she sat on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to her chest. She realized she had become a stranger in her own life. She wasn't living, she was surviving. The next day, something shifted. She went to work, but her focus was gone. In a meeting, her manager asked if she was okay. She forced a smile and said yes, but her voice betrayed her. During her lunch break, she sat alone at a nearby park. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to be still, to breathe, to listen to the silence inside her. That's when she noticed it wasn't silence at all. It was pain. A constant ache she had ignored for so long that it had become part of her. And suddenly, she knew. She couldn't go back to the way things were. If she didn't choose herself now, she never would. And if she didn't, who would teach her daughter what self-worth looked like? The realization hit her with force. Staying was no longer strength. Leaving, choosing herself, was. Aurora didn't have a plan yet, but she had reached her breaking point. And from that moment on, nothing would be the same. Aurora didn't pack her bags in a rush or slam any doors. Her leaving wasn't loud. It was deliberate, quiet, painful, but filled with clarity. She found a small apartment not far from her daughter's school. The space was simple, a little, worn, but it felt like something she hadn't known in years. Hers. The first night alone in that place, Aurora sat on the floor with a cup of tea and stared at the empty walls. There were no arguments, no tension, just silence. This time, a peaceful one. Living alone wasn't easy. The finances were tight. Her daughter split time between homes. The guilt tried to creep in often, whispering that she had broken a family. But Aurora learned to speak back to that voice. No, I chose to save myself. She started going to therapy once a week. At first, it felt strange. Sitting in a room, talking about feelings she had buried for years. But week after week, the weight began to shift. She discovered wounds she didn't even know were still open. And slowly, she started learning how to care for herself, not just survive. One day, the therapist asked her, "When was the last time you did something just for you?" Aurora laughed. A short, surprised laugh. She couldn't remember. That week, she took herself to the movies, alone. No child, no partner, no distraction. She ordered popcorn, sat in the middle row, and cried halfway through the film, not because of the story, but because it felt like freedom. The more she reclaimed these little moments, the more alive she felt. She signed up for a yoga class, joined a women's circle, and started writing in a journal every morning. In those pages, she met herself again. Raw, honest, brave. She wrote about the girl who used to dream, about the woman who became invisible, and about the version of herself she was now learning to love, piece by piece. Aurora wasn't healed, not completely, but she was no longer lost. And sometimes that's more than enough to begin again. Aurora sat in front of the mirror one morning, brushing her hair slowly. Her daughter was still asleep. The sun was rising gently, painting the walls with golden light. Something felt different. Not outside, but inside her. She had come so far without even realizing it. The quiet courage of choosing herself, little by little, had created a new woman. A woman who no longer apologized for existing. A woman who, even in her scars, had found something beautiful. She smiled, a real one, and took a deep breath. That morning, she wore red lipstick. Not to impress anyone, not to be seen, but because it made her feel powerful. At work, She started speaking up more. Her ideas, once silenced by self-doubt, now flowed naturally. People listened. Her voice had weight. She had weight. On a Friday afternoon, she bumped into her ex-partner at the school gate. He looked surprised. Maybe it was the confidence in her walk or the peace on her face. They exchanged a polite hello, and that was it. For the first time, she didn't feel the old ache or guilt or longing. Just clarity. Later that night, she wrote in her journal, "Today I saw the version of myself I used to chase in dreams, and she was me." She began to notice beauty in everyday things. A coffee in silence, a laugh with her daughter, the music of her own solitude. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And finally, it belonged to her. Aurora wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, thriving. She wasn't afraid of being alone because she had become her own home. Aurora stood in front of the mirror again, the same mirror from so many other mornings. But this time, her reflection didn't look like a stranger. It looked like someone she finally knew. The woman staring back at her had been through storms, silence, and scars. But she stood tall, not because she was untouched, but because she had embraced every crack. And through each one, light had come in. Her daughter burst into the room and hugged her tight. "Mom, you look so happy today." Aurora smiled. She was, not because everything was perfect, but because she had stopped waiting for perfection. She had chosen truth instead, her truth. That evening, she met with the women's circle. They sat in a circle of candles, sharing stories, laughter, and pain. Each one carried something heavy, but in that space, they laid it down, together. When it was Aurora's turn to speak, she took a deep breath. "For a long time, I thought love meant sacrifice. That being strong meant staying quiet. That beauty was what others saw in me. But I've learned that love starts with me, that silence is not strength, and that beauty is truth." There were tears in the room, nods, hugs. No one was alone. That night, Aurora wrote in her journal for the last time that season. The page read, "I am no longer searching for someone to complete me. I have found myself. I am not a reflection of someone else's needs. I am my own, and I am finally enough." She closed the notebook, turned off the lights, and curled up beside her daughter. The world outside kept spinning, but inside, Aurora had found her stillness. She had survived heartbreak. She had discovered her voice. She had chosen herself. And in that choice, she had found a love that would never leave. Self-love. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment. I want to know, when did you choose yourself? Like the video. Share it with a strong woman who needs to hear this. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories, like yours, like ours. Stay Bella.